Bettina Stern, welcome to Partnering Leadership Podcast.
Oh, Mahan, I'm so thrilled to be here.
I love your story and most especially the anti-fragility that you are showing at this point with your partner leading Chaia Tacos. But first, wanted to find out a little bit about the background. You had experience in editorial publishing, Suzanne, your partner in environmental science and consulting. And what made you think that you could start a food chain?
Well, I think any born to be entrepreneur has a sense of taking risks, right? So this is something I had always wanted to do, was to create my own unique business. And when I say that, I didn't necessarily know what area that would be. And Suzanne Simon, my business partner, and I met through a love of food. We were introduced through food. We were introduced by a friend who was moving away and said, well, you two should know each other because you like to cook. So I invited Suzanne into a cookbook club I had recently formed. And she started cooking with me and with some other really bright women um, during the years when our kids were quite young. So fast forward a number of years, and Suzanne and I are ready to get back into the workforce full time. We've decided that we want to work together, and we begin concocting different business ideas for Washington, D.C. And the first couple of ideas were really sort of ahead of their time. And the first one was that we wanted to do a food truck. There were no food trucks anywhere beyond really Vancouver and Portland, Oregon. And DC had pretty crappy food back in the day. And we thought, we love to cook. We're feeding our families healthy food. We're treating our friends to really good meals. How can we bring that to a mobile operation? But we each had 3 kids, and the city had a moratorium on food vending licenses. And we were like, oh, we're not going to deal with this rigmarole. So we started a food blog, and we started teaching people how to have confidence in their own kitchens. And we started to grow a following. We started to meet folks around the city who could help us to do that. And, fast forward again a few years, we've been teaching, we've been in the farmer's market, we've been meeting, all different kinds of folks. We've been maturing, and we get tapped to enter a startup food competition for a restaurant idea. And so we base our mini business plan around a cooking class that we had taught, hand griddling corn tortillas and filling them with deliciously cooked, beautifully crafted and prepared seasonal local vegetable tacos, all with handmade salsas, yummy tangy cheeses, the right garnish for the top. And it was a very big hit. So we wrote up this business plan, and we got into the competition as one of the finalists. And at the competition, there were 8 different local entrepreneurs, and they loved the idea. And the women behind the Fresh Farm Market, which is the largest farm market consortium in the area, said, this is fantastic. You're sourcing from all of our producers. Please consider coming to one of our markets to test this crazy esoteric idea we had of filling these corn tortillas that we'd learned how to make with roasted butternut squash with caramelized onion and chipotle yogurt sauce, or creamy kale and potato tacos with salsa verde. And so we did. We became one of the first handful of members, really, at the city's first incubator kitchen. We became a member. We got the pick of our table and where we wanted to be near the stoves and the ovens. And we signed our lease there. We bought all the equipment we thought we'd need. We bought a 10 by 10 foot tent and a folding table and the pots and pans and everything that we would need to get this operation going. And a month later, we appeared, Suzanne and I, with our small tent and our food to make a taco trio, and enough quantity to feed 50 people that very first day, May 3rd, 2015. We sold out in an hour and a half. So we came back the next week, and we brought enough food to feed 100 people. And we brought a friend to handle the cashier. We sold out again in an hour and a half. And before 6 weeks were up, the Washington Post had written about us. And by the end of that first farmer's market, which would be 6 months later when the season ended, it was October 31st, it was a Halloween, we all dressed up. We had been named one of the city's top 9 tastemakers. So we absolutely realized we had an idea that people were interested in, and that there was a desire for this crazy, bougie, yummy, delicious vegetable taco.
Now, even with that success, Bettina, which is magnificent to hear, you had an advisor consultant look at two of you, you and Suzanne, say, two women, you're never going to make it in this business.
Yeah, he was somebody that we mistakenly partnered with at the beginning, um, to act as our, bookkeeper, finance guy, as a consultant. So not one of our strong team members, but still the fact that he said, you guys will have a bullseye on your back because you're two women, just I should have known that that was a red flag, because it actually was the exact opposite. This town, Washington, D.C., is so incredible. Our community of restaurant owners and people are so generous of both their time and their energy. They want you to succeed. If you have a good idea and a good product, they're rooting for you. And the same for us with everybody else. I think of our colleagues, who've gone much bigger than us, the boys from Sweet Green, or Brett Schulman, who's a terrific mentor to us, who's the CEO of Cava Grill. They've all grown huge with big, lots of backing. And, we're hoping that we can get there. That's the plan, is for us to take it to that level where we can take this plant forward concept and move it all the way across the country, all through the country, to the second tier markets, third tier markets, and then to my hometown of New York City eventually.
And as you were growing the concept, I love a quote. This is way before the pandemic hit. You said, don't see the future as a fixed destination, but rather a place you can create out of the choices that you make. What a brilliant quote. Because then in March of 2020, we were hit with a pandemic that obviously has impacted everyone, but impacted restaurants more so. What ended up first happening as the pandemic was hitting us with you and Chaia Tacos?
Well, yeah, I did have the foresight to I'm a news junkie. I'm married to a journalist. I'm just an avid consumer of what's going on. And I had been really paying attention to the fact that something was coming, and had begun to alert team members, colleagues, my friends, to start preparing, and that we needed to begin taking action. So it wasn't a huge surprise that on March 12th, heading into that weekend, we started to prepare for what would be a virtual closing of our doors to the general public. We never shut down. I mean, we're an elevated fast casual, so we were already poised to have food delivered out the door. We were already set up. We had all the right equipment to do that. But all of a sudden, half of our staff of 30 disappeared, because half of the people that worked for us were students. And that was a positive for Chaia, because we didn't need to let anybody go. Those wonderful workers went home to their moms and dads and somewhere safe. Of the remaining 15, half of them didn't want to work. They were scared. They might be pregnant. They might have a health issue. They might have a parent or a partner with a health issue. And so half of them we didn't have to worry about. But then we still had about 8 people who needed to work, wanted to work, were willing to work, were willing to dig in and put the grit in. And we weren't able to bring all 8 of them back initially. It was probably 6 of them. There were a couple who were waiting in the wings. And that took a few weeks to get there, but eventually we did. Suzanne and I decided, we have 2 stores. We have one in Georgetown, the original store, and we have the newer store downtown, that we would divide and conquer. We would each take a shop, and we would shepherd it through this crisis. So I took our original shop down in Georgetown, and she took the Chinatown shop. And we have our bubbles, our tight little pods here. And our staff has been amazing. It really is more like family in many ways, because actually a lot of our employees are interconnected. The two women who lead our kitchens, both the Chinatown and the Georgetown, happen to be sisters. So, um, and here in Georgetown, the older sister works for me, and her son works for us. So, it's pretty tight here. But um, those first couple of months, really into the beginning of June, and the protests were brutal. They were really tough, kind of physically and emotionally for me particularly. I will say I felt like I couldn't stop, because it wasn't just keeping the store open and being here and actually, getting back on the ground again, getting in the business, getting my hands dirty. That was the easy part in a lot of ways, but it was the constant pivoting and iterating, and what's the next thing we're going to try to bring, revenue coming in here. Meanwhile, we're having to apply for grants, and we're having to, go for SBA loans, and we're having to be on all the time, because it was first in, first come, first serve with a lot of that stuff. And we secured it all, but it meant you needed to be on all the time. So that was definitely exhausting. We worked that out. By the summertime, things started to level out, and I stopped being in here all the time. I basically, in the beginning of June, I said, I'm not working on weekends. I, there's no, you don't need me. Let's pay more money to have other people work here than me. Um, but we didn't start this business to give it up. So yes, we're in a really tough position. It's a very hard place to be, but you know, anything worthwhile takes a long time, right? There was some article in the New York Times about this. I don't know if you saw it. This little mochi. Did you see this story about the mochi stand up in the Japanese mountains? And literally, this company has been this little operation's been going for over 1,000 years. So you need to invest your energies in ways that are sustainable and led by a long-term vision. So we got, it was we've got knocked back a few steps in terms of, like, we were on a trajectory that just stopped. But what that allowed us to do was to begin to think, what was really working wrong, what wasn't working well, where can we fix things so that we actually come out of this stronger than we went in, than at the beginning. And I think we're working on a number of things that hopefully have that goal in sight.
And Bettina, that's absolutely what I love about your story. Obviously, the exhaustion, the hard work, everything that you had to go through, it is not a crisis or something you had anticipated or wanted, but you have been focused on making Chaia Tacos even better and stronger as a result of the current crisis, and are even looking at expanding from what I understand.
Well, we are, and actually looking at the operation sides of things, and how do we simplify processes. How do we go from doing something taking 5 steps to taking 3 steps? How do we go from 2 shops to actually opening up a number of much smaller stores with different operations and efficiencies, something we didn't even have time to think about before. We now have some luxury in time to do that, because things are slower. I mean, listen, we went into this late career, or later in life career decision to become entrepreneurs and jump off the dock, really, with absolutely zero clue of how to do any of it. And it's just been an incredibly steep learning curve. Not only was it a steep learning curve learning how to open up one store, then we went to go open up a second store, and then we get thrown this pandemic. So, I don't know, leadership is like a practice of a multitude of professional skills, right? You've got to that take time to develop. And I think what I have to offer is that I have creativity, I have passion, I have a shitload of energy. Um, I'm persuasive, although if you don't like my idea and you think it's a bad one, all right, forget it, we won't do it. And then I just move on to the next idea, right? So I'm super adaptable and can hone skills and dig in if if I agree with the idea. There's certain things I don't like to do and I'm not good at. And you do need to know what you're not good at and what other people are good at and let some of that go. So
Yeah, and I get a sense that you get motivated when, like that initial advisor or consultant, the person tells you that you are not going to be able to make it. Get motivated by that.
yes,
And again, in this hurdle that has been thrown in front of the organization, you are looking at ways to become stronger and better as a result. A true example of what a great anti fragile leader is and what anti fragility is all about.
right. Well, thank you. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I'm not ready to give up. I'm totally, I'm going to remain vigilant and like honed in on what I want to do and somewhat paranoid that this could keep going on, but optimistic that we will ride it out, right? So um, that's, we're navigating a crisis, globally, and everybody's in it to different degrees. I am glad that I'm busy. I'm glad that I mean, it's hard having to have been here this whole 9 months and not really spend much time away or get a break, really. Although I did take some time off, so that's okay. But, keeping balance, work life balance. I have a wonderful husband and three amazing kids, older kids, and my family's really strong. Now, this Thanksgiving, we played the 6 word story. Have you heard of the 6 word stories? So I asked everybody on a thread, my kids, one of my oldest son is married, the girlfriends, and the wife's parents, and we all played it. And mine just came right to me. It was Chaia main focus, family going strong. So the family didn't need me this year. The family was in good shape, the immediate family, but the business needed everything,
And
thankfully.
yeah, and you have given everything to it, Bettina. Thank you for the yummy food. More importantly, thank you for setting an example of what leadership in times of crisis is all about.
Oh, you're
Thank you
welcome.
so much for your leadership, Bettina Stern.
Thank you.